Okay, what I would like to share with you this evening is as follows. We have an amazing legend that teaches us that in the future, every single Jewish holiday is going to be annulled. Somehow or other, in the messianic future, maybe you've heard this idea, at the end of days, in the times of the Messiah, in an ultimate future, every single Jewish holiday is going to be cancelled, with one exception. Now, this is a class on Purim, so you all know that the answer to the exception is Purim. But if you were not in a Purim class right now, and I told you all of the Jewish holidays would be cancelled in the future, with one exception, you might say Pesach, you know, it's the ultimate holiday, our people freed from slavery. It's the moment we become a nation. God takes us with signs and great wonders. Maybe you'll say Yom Kippur, I don't know. Yom Kippur, a day of forgiveness, pardon. Maybe you'll say Rosh Hashanah, a day that's outside of time, a resetting of the clock, a new start. Maybe you could say Shavuot. Maybe the giving. I don't know if anyone would say Sukkot. Sukkot is by its nature transitory. So if we're celebrating the end of time, maybe we wouldn't have Sukkot anymore. But amazingly, what do we say? We say Purim. Take a look at your screen. I'd like to share with you the following. Hopefully you can see that. Do you see? Here, let's make it a bit bigger. And let me just have one page. So over here, you can see the following. We're on text 1. Hopefully you can see that. Do you see it?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, good. Shakol hamoadim yu batelin.
I know, I see.
All of the festivals are destined to be nullified in the Messianic era. An amazing idea. V'yamei hapurim lo yu nevatalin leolam. But the days of Purim will never be nullified. What is the proof verse of this midrash? They choose a verse from the book of Esther. As it says, I've highlighted it for you. These days of Purim will never leave the Jewish people, and their memory will not be lost to its children. V'yamei haPurim ha'ele lo ya'avru mitoch haYehudim v'zachram lo yasuf mezar'am. That is a quote from Megillat Esther. It's right at the very end. If you're still awake at that point of the Megillah reading, or if you haven't gone crazy with all the kids screaming and shouting, and sure, that's one of the last verses we read. These days of Purim will never leave the Jewish people, and their memory will not be lost to its children. Amazing. Amazing. What does that mean? Every single Jewish holiday will be forgotten. Every single Jewish holiday will be nullified. We will not celebrate Pesach. We will not celebrate. Some of you might say, Baruch Hashem, thank God, no more Pesach. We will not celebrate Yom Kippur. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we don't have to fast. We will not celebrate Rosh Hashanah, Sukkot, Shavuot. Hanukkah, what happened to Hanukkah? We don't celebrate anything. There's one holiday and one holiday only, Purim. That's weird. That's strange.
Not really.
Now remember, Purim is not even a biblical holiday. The Torah speaks of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Pesach, Sukkot, Shavuot. We have 5 biblical holidays in the Torah. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Pesach, Sukkot, Shavuot.
What?
We have 5 biblical holidays. Was that what for me, Evelyn? Or you having a... You with me, Evelyn?
Oh, Oh, yes, yes. I hear everything.
Okay, perfect. And after the Torah was given, we are plus 1,000 years later when the story of Purim happens. The holiday of Purim is instituted as a rabbinic holiday. We have two levels in Judaism. This applies to everything, by the way. Some things are biblical in law, some things are rabbinic add-ons in law. Purim is a rabbinical festival that was added on after the Torah was given. Over 1,000 years after the Torah was given. I'd like to take a look at a verse in Jeremiah, Yirmiyahu. This is an amazing verse. Take a look at this from chapter 16. Behold, days are coming, says God, when it will no longer be said, let me get rid of that. Excuse me. When it will no longer be said, as God lives, who took the children of Israel out from the land of Egypt. That was a key line that the prophets would use. When the prophets would speak, a key thing they would say is, I swear to God. And who is God? He is the God who took the children of Israel out of Egypt, because that's how we knew God. Says Jeremiah, a day will come when people will no longer refer to God as God who took Israel out of Egypt, but rather, as God lives, how will people refer to Hashem? They will refer to him as Hashem who took the children of Israel out of the land of the north and from all the lands where he had scattered them. And I shall return them to their land, which I gave to their forefathers. What does that mean? What does that mean? This verse in Jeremiah teaches us that the ultimate redemption at the end of days, when God will bring back the children of Israel from all over the world, scattered to the far-flung four corners of the earth, when that day comes and every single Jew will be returned back to our ancestral homeland that God gave to our fathers, in that day, God will not be called the God who took the children of Israel out of Egypt, but he'll be called the God who took the children of Israel out of Montreal. Because it's one thing to take the children of Israel out of Egypt. That was impressive. Signs and wonders. Could you imagine what it will take the God of Israel to take the Bnei Israel out of Utrama and bring them all to Israel? Could you imagine? I'll go a level deeper. Could you imagine what it would take for Hashem to get all of the Jewish people out of Côte Saint Luc and bring them to Israel? You know what? I'll go even further. Can you imagine? Don't smile. You're smiling already. Can you imagine what it will take for God to take all of the Jews out of Dollard and bring us to Israel? And I don't just mean the Zionists among us. I don't just mean those who are already on the fence. Should we move? Should we not move? Maybe we'll move. I don't know. It's full of Israelis. Then again, it's got nice weather. I mean, every Jew in Dollard. That would be impressive, right? Jeremiah teaches us days are coming, and when God will take every Jew from all over the world and bring them back to the land of Israel, we will no longer call him the God who took us out of Egypt, but the God who took us out of every single country we ever lived in. In other words, this idea that the prophet Jeremiah is teaching us is that the end of days, the messianic future, that ultimate point in time will outshadow, is that the best way of saying it? It will overwhelm, hopefully you're following, it will overwhelm, it will be the definition of how we relate to God. We won't relate to God anymore as the God who took us out of Egypt. And if you follow that line of thinking to its ultimate conclusion, Pesach will be a distant echo of the more powerful, greatest miracles of all, the ultimate redemption. Passover will be a faint memory. It will be a dim light. It will be something underwhelming in comparison with the ultimate of all miracles. God bringing the Jews of Outremont, Côte Saint Luc, and Dollard back to Israel. This is the biblical source for the idea that in the future, all of the festivals will be annulled. All of the festivals will be cancelled. All of the festivals will just pale in comparison. You're going to look back and remember the great things that happened. Well, the great things that happened end up not being so great in light of how overwhelmingly incredible the ultimate miracles truly are. So far, so good? You with me?
Mhm.
Okay. This
A
is
question: where
Giles.
does the Gog Magog war fit into all this?
That will be how the end is introduced through a ultimate international war, starting around the borders of Ukraine. No. I don't
Yeah.
know how that will happen or when that will happen. And I'm certainly not making fun or minimizing war, chas v'shalom. But we know that an international war will take place that will be the harbinger of the end of days. Now,
Thank you.
all of that is child's play for what I want to show with you next. I want to share with you a very deep idea in Kabbalah. This is a Kabbalistic work written in the 17th century by one of the greatest master Kabbalists who ever lived. His name is Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto will die at the age of 40, and his books in his young life are studied today more so than perhaps any other author. Maybe Maimonides is studied more. But in the history of Jewish thought, one man stands out more so above all others. Perhaps Maimonides is at the peak. I'm willing to claim Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto is that individual. No matter who you are, no matter what your orientation, Hasidic, Misnagdic, Ashkenazi, Sephardi, ultra-Orthodox, modern Orthodox, Hared, whatever brand you might be, this one individual is perhaps one of the greatest authors of all time. He wrote copious books, over 100 in his lifetime. He was chased out of his village where he lived because he was practicing in active Kabbalah. What's active Kabbalah? Active Kabbalah is when you would attempt to create a golem and create life out of mere dust. I'm sure you've heard the famous tales of the Golem of Prague, for example. He ended up in Amsterdam as a diamond polisher. And incredibly, he writes a book titled Dat Tevunot, The Understanding Heart. It's a very dense book. It's a very terse book, and it's a very difficult book to understand. But what's amazing about this is that he writes it without any of the language of Kabbalah. Anyone that studied Kabbalah knows it's written in code. It's written in a way that if you are uninitiated, it sounds like gibberish. It sounds like gobbledygook. No one can really understand it, and that's partly why. They want it to be a closed system. In the book Dat Tuvunot, The Understanding Heart, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto will write an entire book on the deepest themes of God, all taken from Kabbalah, and he will write it in a non-Kabbalistic language. Amazing. Just to make this more complicated before we begin, he writes it as a dialogue. The entire book is a dialogue between two individuals. Who are the two individuals? One individual is the heart, the seat of emotion in man, and the other individual is the intellect. Whoa. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? This is heavy stuff. A dialogue back and forth between the heart and the head, the intellect and the emotion. I'm going to share with you a tiny passage, and he reveals actually the secrets of the world. You ready for this? I'm giving you the keys to the kingdom on a silver platter. Everything you've ever wanted to know, here it is. Text 3. Okay, I'm going to go slowly. In every action that God performs in the world, there are two aspects. There is the revealed and there is the hidden. Stop there. Let's unpack that. How do we know God? On the one hand, God is infinite. God is this all-perfect being. God is removed from our world. God is infinity. God is essence, pure essence. We can't describe that type of God. We can't touch or see or understand that type of God. He's beyond. And that's all true. And there's another way that we relate to God. The way a human being can relate to an all-powerful, all-perfect God is through his behavior and actions that he performs with us in this world. Let me give you a simple example. One such behavior or action of God in this world we call nature. Nature. Nature actually is one of God's coats. What does a coat do when you wear a coat? You cover yourself, you hide yourself, you protect yourself. You're not exposed to the elements, you're not open to the storm. A coat shelters and hides. Nature is one of God's clothings. In the language of Kabbalah, God wears clothes. And a clothing is our way that we can understand and see God. It's not God himself, but it gives us a faint outline and shape of the person wearing that item of clothing. Nature is one such example of the clothing that God wears. In every single way that God relates and acts in this world, there are two components, a revealed and a hidden. The hidden aspect, I'm continuing now in the reading, the hidden aspect is the deep design inherent in all of what God does to bring humanity to a general state of perfection. We are not talking now of a leaf falling from a tree. We are not talking of you bumping your toe. We are talking of the grand scale meta aspects of the workings of the world, the interactions of governments, war and peace, the largest scale upon which humanity operates. And Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto wants to claim that contained in the hidden aspects of God's involvement in this world, there is a design to bring humanity to a state of perfection. In other words, everything that happens happens for a reason. And that reason is to bring humanity to its completion. Everything that happens is so that humanity reaches its ultimate state of perfection. Look what he says. He makes a very bold claim. There is no action. I'm over here. There is no action, great or small, whose inner purpose is not leading to this perfection. In the future, God will let the Jewish people understand how even the afflictions they underwent were for the good and prepared them for the state of being blessed. In our current time, God's actions are not understood by us at all. They can only be seen in a superficial way, and their true essence is hidden. Yet, their essence is hidden all the same. They are all purely good without any bad whatsoever, and this is certainly not clear or understandable now. Okay, let's unpack what he just said. This is a tiny passage of a massive book. And what he claims in this piece has been summarized in the English phrase, everything happens for a reason. Have you heard that before? Everything happens for a reason. What's the reason? I don't know. Don't ask me what the reason. How am I supposed to know what the reason? Everything happens for a reason. And he claims something even further than that. He claims not only does everything happen for a reason, but everything is so that there will be somehow or other a goodness or a preparation that is involving the Jewish people for them to be prepared for their ultimate state of being blessed. Can we understand what happens in the world and make sense of it? Absolutely not. Does that mean we are to say, I've seen what has happened and I claim it to be good? Absolutely not. Does that mean that when we see evil, we should say it's good? Absolutely not. What he is saying here is that we do not understand some of the suffering. We do not understand the affliction. We are incapable of appreciating the evil that happens in this world. Yet, and here is his claim, even though human beings do not understand it or appreciate it, and even though human beings may see evil as evil, ultimately, the essence of cosmic forces taking place in the world has a hidden essence. And that hidden essence is for the good and to prepare the world for its ultimate state of being fixed and blessed. It's a bold claim. It is a very bold claim. Comments or questions up until this point? So far, so good?
Mhm.
I want to go step by step. If anyone has a question, a argument, by the way, you don't have to agree with him. Let's finish off his passage. He finishes off with this tiny passage. However, I'm over here. You see where I am? However, in messianic times, we will at least be able to see and understand how these things stemmed from God's deep and wondrous plans for our ultimate benefit. In other words, when will we understand why things happened the way they happened? When Mashiach comes. The Messiah is going to explain everything. When the Mashiach comes, then we'll understand. Now, before we go on to the next source, I want to share with you a very important summary. We, in 2022, look at the world, and I'll come back to the Ukraine for a second, and we are left without even understanding why the events are happening. I don't know about you, but I looked at 3 different news websites today. Do you know what each of the different news websites had on them? A beginner's guide to explaining why Russia is invading Ukraine. What does that tell you? That people who are thoughtful, conscientious, good individuals that want to learn and know what's happening in the world, they have no clue why it's happening. And now let's go to the next level. We look at our world leaders and we see they are perplexed. They don't know what to do. They don't know what a proper response should be. They are stuck in this moment of, we don't know. We don't know. And where does that leave the common man and woman in the street? We are often left, and war is but one example, we are often left with the impression that history, in the famous words of Joseph Heller, catch 22, is a trash bag blown open by the wind, scattering its garbage in every which direction. And we are left to think, and even when we are searching for that meaning, we are left feeling that there's no guiding events to world history. We are lost in a swirling sense of confusion without rhyme, reason, or meaning. And in other words, if this sounds familiar, we're left feeling the way Mordechai was left feeling in the light of Haman's decree to annihilate, destroy, and decimate the entirety of the Jewish people. Where is the judge? Where is the justice? And yet, our sources, Judaism teaches us that there are hidden elements to world history that in retrospect, we are able to see, view, and understand, and even have a comprehension that there is a moral force, there is a godly element to human history that is even on one level guiding the incomprehensible events that we sometimes live through and shake our heads and throw up our hands at. And we are told that somehow or other, at the end of it all, we'll be able to see the picture that has been painted. Rabbi Soloveitchik famously gives an analogy of human history as the underneath side of a tapestry. Don't know how many of you used to make tapestries once upon a time. I remember growing up with my grandparents would frame them and put them on the wall. They would make these sewing tapestries. You're familiar with it? I'm sure you grew up with that as well.
I did it too.
And Rabbi Soloveitchik says, if you take a look at the underneath side, where all of the knots are stuck in the holes, it looks like a splotch of random colors that makes no sense. And but if you turn it over, you see an exquisite picture. And the further away from it you are, the more it comes into focus. Have you ever seen like pixels on a screen? We know you're not looking at a image right now. What are you looking at? You're looking at pixels. And if you zoom in and zoom in and zoom in, you'll see tiny dots of color, right? We know this. And the closer you are, the less you can see. The further away you are, the more crystal clear the vision becomes. So amazingly, when we move further away, we see better, we see clearer. Okay, let's finish this idea with a contemporary thinker. So far, so good. If anyone has questions, jump in. Okay, let's finish this with a contemporary thinker. I want to go to Chaim Friedlander. Chaim Friedlander, contemporary in Israel. I believe he's still alive. I'm not sure. You'll excuse me for not knowing, but certainly contemporary. Some of his books have been translated into English. The title of his books, multiple books, Siftei Chaim. Look at what he says with all of what we've covered and everything that we have just understood. Now let's paint that onto the canvas of Purim. Now we can understand the words of the Jewish sages. In the times of the Messiah, all of the holidays will be nullified except for the days of Purim. The common denominator between the messianic revelations and the revelations of Purim is the understanding of how evil served as a means to bring about the revelation of God's unity. That everything develops as God wills it to, despite the appearance of evil. This will be the revelation in the future, that everyone will understand retroactively how everything was leading to the divine purpose. This is also the revelation of Purim. Within the hidden actions, without overstepping the boundaries of natural events, the divine plan was revealed. Amazingly, Rabbi Friedlander wants to take the microcosm of the story of Purim, and beautifully he wants to show that Purim is in microcosm human history. What is all of human history? In light of Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto that we saw earlier, all of human history are a series of events, up, down, up, down, up, down, backwards, forwards, dark ages, terrible plague, war. All of human history was leading to an understanding of an ultimate end, showing God's unity. It wasn't random. It wasn't broken, disparate parts of an uncaring universe that threw together chance and randomness. No, it was a single unified God behind it all, working somehow or other with human freedom to create an end goal showing God's unity and perfection. That is human history. And Rabbi Friedlander wants to say, why will Purim never be annulled? Because Purim is in microcosm exactly that idea. What is Purim? This evil, that evil, Vashti killed, randomness of no queen, Esther's queen, Haman devising a plot, the destruction of the Jewish people, the plan to annihilate, evil after evil randomly happening, and all of it V'nahbachu, upside down, revealed that everything, Vashti was killed to allow for Esther to come in. Haman appointed so that he could focus on the Jewish people. Building a gallows for Mordechai, Haman was himself hung upon it. That day that he had picked was the day we celebrate. Everything turned upside down to reveal the divine plan. Purim is in microcosm to all of human history. All of the holidays will be nullified. This means that because the future revelations of God will be so much greater than any of the previous ones, consequently, all the earlier revelations will pale into insignificance. However, the revelation of Purim is different because it shares the same type of revelation as those of the future, which is the revelation of God's unity. And therefore, Purim will never be nullified. As it says, V'zachram lo yasuf mizar'am, their memory will not be lost from its children. Amazing.
So Rabbi, we must add Yom HaShoah and Yom HaTzmaut for modern days, because what happened with the 6 million Jews and then the birth of Israel, and it's a recap of history just like Purim.
Yes, in many ways. In many ways. Although there is still in our world today a world of not understanding. But what Purim allows for is a heightened ability to perceive godliness in the random events, so-called random events of this world. And if we can, as greatly as possible, as much as we can, and we might not be able to, but to the degree that we can appreciate God being behind human history, then Purim's meaningfulness is something which can become eternal. These ideas are the blueprints, if you will, that world history is one where evil will ultimately be overcome by the forces of good, serving as a means towards the triumph of goodness. Now, unfortunately, we are incapable of seeing this today. Nevertheless, just as the apparently negative events in the story of Purim contributed to its successful outcome, so too in Messianic times, we will discern a pattern of events that will have ultimately led to our redemption. This makes Purim the eternal festival. Thank you very much. Good?
Thank you.
Interesting?
Yeah, mind blowing.
Thought-provoking?
Very.
Challenging.
Very challenging. It's very difficult because we are in this side of history, and therefore we see evil as evil. And we are supposed to. Do not come away from this class misunderstanding that evil is nothing other than evil. It is evil. We are not to say, oh, it's really good. It's actually for the best. Don't worry, this is all going to reveal God's unity at the end. No, we battle evil. We fight against evil. We acknowledge evil. There is a bracha. Anyone who has studied Masechet Brachot can tell you there is a blessing that is made over evil. Baruch Dayan ha'emet. We say evil for what it is. We don't say it is good. But incredibly, at the end of all of human history, somehow or other, we will see how it all lent itself to the conclusion that we will perhaps experience ourselves.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. That was truly unbelievable. You know, I was coming into a second Purim shiur, and that was unbelievable. That's all I
very
could say.
kind of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I hope this has given you what to think of, what to think about, and Let me, you know what, if you give me 10 more seconds.
Rabbi,
Yes, sir.
um,
Let me stop the
isn't part,
record. Yeah, actually go on. I'll ask the question. Maybe it'll be useful for.
Why should I enforce it?
isn't part of the, sorry, I got cut off.
Yeah.
Isn't part of the celebration of Purim and is that the Jewish people reacted in an assimilated country and created unity and just didn't wait for Hashem to do things, but created their own things by fasting and uniting, which
That's a component of it.
no, what
That's
I'm
a
trying to say,
component of it.
that we have to fight the evil. We just can't wait for God to say, to be there. We have to react to it ourselves.
That's absolutely true.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes, that's absolutely true. That is a component of it as well.
At the end of Megillah Esther, Jews ourselves committed evil by slaying our neighbors. It's at the end of this joyous story, we're seem to be involved in the kind of well, I don't think it's called a genocide, but certainly it's written that they slayed their neighbors in joy.
So the question, Leslie, the question you're asking is a very serious one and a good one. And the question can be viewed in that perspective and can be viewed in the perspective of when someone is coming to kill you, one should arise first to kill them.
It's a mitzvah.
And it's a Talmudic principle of self-defense, fascinatingly. So what the Jewish people were actually involved in was an act of self-defense. But these are challenging moral issues that you are bringing up. Absolutely. I don't want my answer to just, be, yeah, it doesn't bother me. It's just something we brush aside. That is an answer. That's an approach I'm sharing. But it doesn't fully grapple with the full moral issue that you are raising.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it was announced publicly that they were going to kill all the Jews, and it's a mitzvah in the Torah, just like we learned from Amalek, to kill somebody before they're going to kill you if they say they're going to kill you.
Right. We have an additional crease here that the decree was a decree from a nation which was the arch nemesis of the Jewish nation. And that's something we haven't touched on in this series. It is worthy certainly of further attention, which is the nation of Amalek. Who is Amalek? What do they represent? What is their mythos? What is their purpose? And how does the Jewish nation relate to them? That is actually a very rich and fertile area of exploration, which perhaps could be a follow-up series to this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to pause here, everybody. I hope this was thought-provoking and interesting. And Bezrat Hashem, please God, we will continue next Thursday. And next Thursday is Rosh Chodesh. So Adar Sheni will be even closer to Purim. All right. I wish everyone a good evening. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you
you
very
for
much.
joining, and I will see you next week. I wish you all an early good Shabbos.
You too, Rabbi.
Be well, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.